At that 157, Lucas Revano against Andrew Clark. You talk about familiarity. Guys who have wrestled in the past, a ton of common opponents, guys who are explosive wrestlers.
These two guys just met each other last week, essentially, over at the Midlands tournament. Clark with that 4-2 decision. That's what happens sometimes if you go to Midlands against some familiar opponents and they happen to end up being in your schedule anyway. So this is it's not a gimme for either guy. Kind of have to throw that first matchup out the window. It's indicative a little bit, Joe, but again, it's a fresh match, and obviously Penn the home mat advantage here, different environment rather than a tournament setting.
Revano 10-6 on the campaign, listed 25th in terms of the rankings. Clark 33rd at 6-2.
Revano's a guy the Rutgers staff is surely familiar with. Jersey native, Camden Catholic alum. I like what Revano has done this year. Again, 10-6, nothing to say, hey, near the top of the rankings, but he's been very solid throughout his entire career. 69 wins, qualifier a couple years ago. That's when he's at 165, Joe, so I'm glad to see that he's been able to adjust to a different weight for the first time in his career.
You talk about the level of experience that he brings to the table, and that's saying something. Not to say that he's the only one, because there's plenty of experience in this Penn lineup, but you do see some newcomers and fresh faces starting to suit up for the Quakers, and Revano has been a steadying presence for Roger Reyna.
Yeah, right in the middle of that lineup, as I mentioned before. Qualifier in 2022. Got to NCAA's at 165, now down at 157 this year. So we have an eye poke here, so a quick stoppage. Revano's that guy right in the middle of the lineup where, again, I know it's different today because they started at 149, but he's a guy that, especially 157, can really get you going into intermission. He's one of those guys that can count on giving you that momentum before the break, or sometimes break his skid if necessary. One of the tougher guys I've seen, especially at these middle weights.
Clark sorting out his contact lens situation. Rutgers leading Penn 3-0.
And in my experience, seeing Clark wrestle, that's not the first nor the last time his contacts have popped out during a match.
So far, stalemate between these two. 1 minute to go in the opening period.
I'm going to talk about a guy who's in a similar vein as Revano as Andrew Clark. In and out of the rankings the last couple of years. Got to NCAA's in Tulsa last year. He finally got over 500 to finish the season. He was 20-17. And he's actually 40-39 for his career. He's a guy that was kind of throwing around different weights, Joe. 149, 57, 65. He was all over the place. And it wasn't until last year where they finally got him at his right weight. Solidified himself a spot in the lineup at 157. And, a junior.
What kind of effect does that have on a wrestler who's bouncing around to different weight classes?
Sometimes it can be negative just because you never really find your spot. Other times it's a good way to get acclimated to different weights and you see different styles and maybe you adjust your own style. And it's not necessarily for everybody. Of course, this could come with guys at this level that end up being late bloomers where, hey, I was down 2 weight classes a couple of years ago, but now that I'm heavier or I'm a little bit in the middle now, my strength and endurance are there, and this is the healthiest I've felt wrestling. So it could take a while to adjust. And, a guy like Clark, who is not highly recruited out of Collingswood High School in New Jersey, he's one of those under-the-radar guys. And obviously, we know how good the states of New Jersey and Pennsylvania are for high school wrestling, but he was a little bit under the radar and more of a developmental piece and eventually just found his way into the lineup.
Starting out on the bottom here in period number 2, Lucas Revano starting on top for Penn. Straight out, we'll begin again.
Good chase there by Revano. See, Clark was able to run it, trying to run away there, trying to cut at the hands, but that was a good job by Revano keeping the weight down heavy on Clark's feet and hips. Really couldn't break away there. But as I mentioned in that last match, Joe, you don't want to do this about 5-6 times in a row because it's not sustainable really for either guy.
And yet they are making a break for it. Revano trying to keep him in.
Saw Revano have good mat awareness right there, trying to keep that 1 foot in. Maybe suck Clark back in towards the circle. And I could tell Revano's looking over to I saw him look over to the corner there. I think he was contemplating, hey, maybe I should go free optional start here. Maybe cut him loose and work back on the feet. And it seems like he's going to continue try to ride Clark here.
Clark gets the escape here. And finally, first blood belongs to Rutgers.
I like what Clark did there. Immediately after the escape, he did not back up. He stayed in Revano's face. Again, reface him as you're supposed to do. But he was able to keep Revano on his heels towards the boundary. And again, that's where those referees start looking, hey, is this guy stalling right here because you're not working back towards the center?
It certainly wasn't the case there for Clark. As you mentioned, Nick, 1-0 against Revano. Not a whole lot between these two so far.
This is the match that I know Andrew Clark likes to wrestle, just defensively sound, kind of wearing his opponents down. Winning small but controlling. It's a good shot by Revano, though.
Got the leg. Revano looking for the takedown, and he gets it. There is that 3-point takedown. Revano now trying to stay in. No dice, but Revano in front by 2 with 30 seconds to go in the second period.
That's a pretty clutch takedown by Revano right there, especially with 29 seconds to go in this second period. He's going to have choice in the third. And I would, in all likelihood, think he's going to choose bottom. So Clark's got a little work to do. So if you're Andrew Clark right now, you want to get out. You want to at least cut this down to a 1-point match going into the third. If not, at least getting a reversal, get an escape, get a takedown here. There's that escape right there.
Kind of a snap escape by Clark. Now the deficit's just 1.
You don't want to be overly aggressive here to try to get that takedown back if you're Clark. If you're Revano, you're at least a little content right here with this lead.
3, 2, 1, time.
Head to the third period.
Well, now that strategy comes into play here, Joe, with Clark. Do you try to ride? He's been making vast improvements on top from year to year, but in this case, you basically need to ride him out the entire period to get that riding time point, tie it for overtime, unless you're going to be able to get a turn here.
A couple of that. There might not be a better wrestler on the bottom than Lucas Revano in Penn's roster. And there you go, right there. Quick escape.
Didn't take long right there, but again, this is now going to be one on the feet. I would say this was pretty likely. If you look at this match on paper, it's going to come down to a situation like this where a takedown could win it. And hey, we're at 4-2 right now. Clark won the previous matchup 4-2, so very similar style of a match right here. Another shot by Revano there, nice.
So how do you balance this if you're Clark, right? You need the takedown, but you don't want to put yourself in a bad position against Revano.
You don't want to be too careful picking your spots. Again, you're under 90 seconds here. You got to find your opening. He's been good at his setups right now, but he hasn't really been able to break that hand defense of Revano right now. It seems like Clark is still just content posting on the head right there.
Revano gets another takedown. Big takedown for the Quakers, and now it's 7-2 Revano in front.
Great counterattack by Revano, trying to take advantage of Clark being a little hesitant on offense right there, driving him out of bounds. And with this 5-point lead right here, Clark's got to do a lot of work to get back in this one, but this could be a big win for Lucas Revano.
And Nick, you're right. Clark got kind of caught in the middle. Do I go? Do I not go? And that's when Revano pounced.
Again, no stall calls on either side, so if you're Revano, you can afford to kind of ride here a little bit tougher. Up by 5, and see if he wants to go to the optional. I saw him signaling there, Joe, but I guess they're not going to go the optional start.
So Roger Reyna said hold him for 5 seconds, then let him go. So we'll see if that's what happens here. Now Roger Reyna is saying let him go. So mission accomplished right there for Penn.
They are thinking bonus points now, so if he cuts him here, which he will. Actually, no, I take that back. He's going to go optional start, which ultimately ends up leading to a cut unless you hit something big.
There's the neutral return for Clark, but we'll see if Revano tries to come up with something here. Got the leg, but nice slither out by Clark. Stall warning. Revano doesn't care. Another takedown.
And now the riding time is going to be a factor. It's at 53 seconds and climb. If you're Clark, you got to get out to save bonus points. But that was huge by Lucas Revano. That riding time point is going to be the difference should he be able to ride Clark for these next 4 seconds here. But to save bonus points, if you're Rutgers, Clark has to get out. Otherwise, we're looking at a 4-3 Penn lead.
Pretty good game planning there by Revano and Reyna, drawing up the end of this one. Revano hanging on. There's the escape.
Well, that riding time point's at 101. Excuse me, the time is at 101 for Revano, so it would be a point at the end of the match. Clark already has a stall warning on him. Good shot there.
There's a takedown. Nice recovery by Clark. So it'll just be a decision for Penn. Clark, nice performance in that bout's waning moments. But Revano comes up with the 10-7 decision. Now this duel evens up at 3.
That was some clutch wrestling by Lucas Revano, getting that loss back from just last week against Clark. Gave up the late takedown there, but overall,